Look, a lot of us had a rough 2020. The Cowboys rougher than most as the NFL goes, but the pandemic really screwed things up for a lot of people in a lot of different ways, in tragic ways for hundreds of thousands of people and their families. But what happened at the college level was plenty of guys made the conscientious decision not to play last year for a variety of reasons. The uncertainty, the lack of national college football standards for the safety or lack thereof that would prevail in their weight rooms, in their locker rooms, on their fields. And now we see the aftermath of that. The players who chose not to play last year, who opted out of the 2020 season in the draft pool with the guys who did play. Let's listen to Jerry Jones from yesterday talking about how he and the Cowboys are viewing those who made that very difficult decision to not play last year.
If the guys had not very much exposure, guess what? He may not have played last year. May could have, but he didn't. Okay, he didn't because he decided to opt out. So you haven't seen him since the 6 plays he ran when he was a sophomore. Let's hold him while you're getting ready to make that decision right there.
How do you view players who did not play last year, or really for all three of you? How do you grade them?
They're compromised. I'd much rather have seen the reps and the plays that they've got. Coach, help me here. How many plays in a normal situation would let's say a defensive tackle by playing last year as opposed to not playing last year if he'd have played all of his college games?
71 plays a game, 10 games,
700 plays.
700 plus plays.
And plus, usually those players, if they're the type player you want, are better from their junior to their senior year. Fair to say?
No, absolutely.
That's what you look for. And so the point is, it's you don't have as much information when they didn't play last year.
Look, we talked about this yesterday on PFTPM, and I got myself a little cranked up about it. I'm going to get myself cranked up about it again today. Kevin Colbert, the Steelers GM, explained in a very calm, dispassionate voice earlier this week that if all things are equal between two candidates, they're going to take the guy who played last year over the guy who didn't play last year, even though they fully respect the decision of those players who decided not to play in 2020 due to the pandemic. I feel like, and you could, this is one of those issues, Chris, that would be a good topic for the debate club in high school, because you could make persuasive arguments on either side of it.
Sure.
Is it good that a guy played last year? Is it bad that he played last year? Is it good, for a running back or a defensive tackle? Is it good that he's coming to the NFL with more tread on the tires? That could be viewed as a positive. If what we saw from him in 2019 was pretty damn good and we didn't see anything last year, he's the same guy. Yeah, maybe he needs to be in a little bit better shape, but that's what we do. We get guys in shape, but we've seen what he can do.
Yeah.
And maybe he'll be even better than he was in 2019. We like what he did in 2019. Maybe he'll be even better. Maybe he's still improving. So I just keep coming back to the fact that football at every level, not just the NFL, but at every level, they want robots. They want guys who are going to do what they're told to do. They want guys who aren't going to stand up and push back against the momentum that shoves them toward the field. And anyone who exercises that independent thinking, that original thought, that movement that pushes against what coach and team would want him to do, those guys get red flagged because we don't want someone like that keeping us from doing what we're trying to do on our football field. I feel like that is the message that is subtly or not coming through in what Jerry Jones is saying.
Well, I don't I don't disagree with that. I think there's some of that there, but hey, I mean, Mike, put yourself in their shoes. It's the business of football. I mean, yeah, they'd like to see people who play football to, acquire more information, see where the guy has gone as a football player. So I understand it. I mean, if it's apples to apples, yeah, I think if I'm in their shoes too, playing GM, and you're going, wait, okay, I got let's just say, for lack of a better number, I got a 7.0 grade and a 7.0 grade for two players that are great. All right, well, this one played last year, this one didn't. And, yeah, I'm going to take that, even though, the biggest.
But what if he's a running back? What if he's a running back? It's better that he didn't play last year.
Okay.
He's got more reps in him at the NFL level.
Maybe. That could be a rare case. You're right. That can be. But I could also say, it was one less year on him getting better at running routes or learning how to pick up a blitzer or doing other things like that. That, again, these are young kids who are still learning the sport. So you've stopped that learning curve a little bit. And I think that's where it just scares teams. Coaches and GMs and owners, they're very conservative that way, right? So they want all the information available. It scares them to a degree. It scares them when it's apples to apples, and that's what's going to be interesting about this draft, because as we get towards the end of the first round, first round's about elite players. Some of these teams are going to have no choice. You're going to have guys where you're going to go, do you want a guy who's super talented and didn't play, or a guy that's not that talented and did play? And you're going to hear then the excuses of why we should take the guy who's super talented and all that and sat out. But I understand, erring on the guy that played last year than the guy that didn't.
They didn't hesitate to take Jalen Smith with a completely wrecked knee.
No, it was risky. Right.
Sat out a whole year.
Right.
And there were questions about whether he could ever play. But there will be a point where
Randy Gregory
great
too.
player becomes value when you slide into round 2. And maybe that's what happens. They're compromised, meaning they're going to be drafted. They're just going to be drafted lower than they would have been. But you know what's going to happen? You're going to have some teams that get some pretty damn good players because they're going to understand. It is a case-by-case determination. But I still think this presumption that it's a bad thing if you didn't play last year.
Yeah, that's
we
wrong.
understand why you didn't play, and we respect your decision, but now we're going to hold it against you. And I can boil it down like this. We had that great explanation from Nick Saban earlier in the week, and I wrote something about it yesterday, and it hits the nail on the head, and it's a great message for anyone, whether you play football, any other sport, or no sports at all. You are going to be evaluated at some point for employment, for admission to a college program, postgraduate, whatever, and the two most important words when people are making decisions about you are and but.
Yeah.
The question is, and think about it. If you're asking a GM or a coach or an owner right now, if the opt-out is part of the story that is being told on a player, it's not and he opted out, it's but he opted out. The negative connotation.
It is.
Right? No one's going to say, and he chose to take care of his family. And he realized that the science was uncertain and there was some vague evidence of people having heart damage as a result of it. Athletes, seasoned athletes, highly conditioned, having heart disease as a result of it. And so it's not, that's an and, but I feel like it's being couched as a but, not as an and. And that maybe tells us everything we need to know about how these teams view guys who opted out.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes. And listen, I understand it to a degree. Again, it's the business of football. And, you're looking to acquire guys that are good at that business, which is playing football. And you're making big investments into these players. So with that, hey, they do want, and again, yeah, they want a guy that did play, that they feel is comfortable, like, man, he wants to play football at all costs. I hope they're not holding it against, these guys to a certain degree. But, yeah, I think when it's like that, they're going to favor the guy that, we've joked about over the last few weeks, the Mike Tomlin quote. I want volunteers, right? I don't want hostages. I mean, everybody is looking for that in the NFL. So that's part of this conversation of this NFL draft. But, at the same time, too, Jerry said something interesting there as well, where he's like, hey, more times than not, too, a guy that you look at as a junior, right, and he's a good football player, I mean, almost 98, 99 times out of 100, the guy gets better the next year. He's getting bigger. He's growing as a man. He's getting more mature mentally. I mean, usually always it goes in that direction unless there's like an injury involved or something like that too. So that's where it's going to be interesting to see, who balances that whole high wire act there with this whole conversation. It's going to be fascinating for Thursday night.
I think the more accurate explanation than we want volunteers. We want guys who have no regard whatsoever for their own physical health and well-being, and who will play that way on the football field, because when they get injured, and they will, we'll scrape them up and we'll put somebody else out there. But at least we know that when he's out there, he is playing with the kind of reckless abandon that will allow him to get the most out of his skills. And what better way to prove that he has no regard for his health and safety than to play college football during a global pandemic at a time of high uncertainty? The only certainty for him was he loves him some football, and he's going to go play. And I really do think that is implicit in all this. The combination of it shows how much you truly love football, and it shows that you are willing to fall into line with what the coach, the organization, wants you to do at all times. And I do think it gets viewed as a negative, even though it shouldn't, because they're looking for a highly talented individual who will do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want, and they never have to pull the ripcord on the lawnmower. He's ready to go at any given moment, no matter the circumstances. And I think that even though it shouldn't be this way, opting out is sort of a litmus test for some of these teams on how much a guy loves football.
Yeah.
And I hate to even say it because I think it's wrong.
It is wrong.
But I think that's how they're looking at it.
I mean, you're right. They are. The biggest thing, though, it's going to affect the middle class of the draft and those guys more than anything. You know, again, hey, J.C. Horn played what? What was it, Pete? A few games this year and then opted out? Oh, guess what, Mike? He's really talented. Nobody cares, you know? That's not a conversation for him. Right. So the super talented ones kind of just gets like swept under the rug. Like, well, doesn't matter. Like, he's pretty awesome. All right. You know, and that it's going to be more about the splitting the atoms in the third round. And that's where it's going to affect those players, where it's like, oh, we got two wide receivers, one played, one opted out. Let's go with the one that played and did that. And I understand that too. Again, you know, that's going to be he's played more football. He's had more reps. We saw him improve on the thing he was bad at the year before. We have visual evidence that the guy worked and got better at it. You know, so that there is some logic, of course, to the way they're thinking. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a, you know, what do I want to say, a caveman attitude a little bit to the like, oh, he didn't play and now I'm not going to take him because he doesn't love football. Yeah, of course there's that part in the NFL with all coaches and teams. But I think more of this is about, you know, the gathering the information more than anything.
Yeah. I think there's a way to spin it if you want to into a positive. I think it's more of a but than an and when they look at the scouting report and bring up the topic of whether or not the guy chose to play last year. I think that's unavoidable. It's just the way it is.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.